Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining and welcome to today's webinar, Accounting Automation, hosted by ConnectWise. I'm Jess Taveras, an Event Program Manager here at ConnectWise. Thank you for joining us today. I do have a few housekeeping rules before we get things kicked off. First, if you can't hear us, try increasing your volume on 24 on your speakers and on your headset, and make sure you are connected. We do recommend using Google Chrome as your internet browser of choice. If there's any technical issues, please make sure your browser is up to date or try incognito mode. Please utilize our Q&A box today as well to ask any questions that you might have throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to answer them. To engage during our session today, we do ask you to feel free to click the reactions. You can do this by hovering over the smiley face at the bottom of the webinar page to react. You can also explore the links in the related content box and connect with our presenters today on LinkedIn as well. Please be advised that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared with all of the attendees after the webinar in a post email. I see some are acting now. Awesome. I also want to let you guys know what it really means to be a certified ConnectWise Invent certified integration. We have 3 of our vendors here today to talk through this with you. Invent is our integration collaboration program here at ConnectWise. We work with third-party vendors to deliver partners like yourselves unique integrations in our PSA, while also delivering secure, supported, and best-in-class integrations to partners like yourselves. Certified integrators go through an in-depth security process to obtain the certification as well. Now I'd like to welcome our host, Paul MacNeill, VP and GM of Payments, and Gen 6 Product Marketing Manager at ConnectWise. Today I'm also joined by 3 of our certified integrators. Please welcome Brent, Manager of Strategic Alliances at Avalara, Philip, Software Services Director at Dorton, and Commercial Manager at Zynk, James Shaw. I will now hand it off to Jen.
Thanks, Jess. So welcome again. I'm Jen, and always excited to be speaking to this group of people. So to kick us off, thought we should start with some stats that I personally found very interesting, but I think everyone here will as well. Specifically around tax compliance, 88% of best-in-class companies feel confident to comply with tax obligations after they implemented a tax automation system, compared to only 21% of others. So that's a pretty startling stat around feeling confident with your taxes and filing, and whether you're using a tax automation system or not. So I think we'll have a lot of good conversation around that today. I'm not sure if there's anything, James, that you want to, or I'm sorry, Brent, that you want to add into that conversation regarding anything Avalara-esque. We can certainly dig in deeper later.
Yeah, I was just going to go ahead and make a comment, and happy to get into it a little bit later, for sure.
Awesome. And then another, I say startling because these are the things that take my breath away. If you don't have an invoicing automation solution, you can spend up to $11.50 to generate just a single invoice. And $11.50 as a one-off may not feel like a lot, but considering how many invoices a business may need to generate, that can really add up and really start to impact the bottom line. And knowing that automation solutions can bring that down to just 71 cents per invoice is a huge benefit. I think we can see that monetarily, but from a employee standpoint as well, right? That's a lot less manual work. That's a lot more employee satisfaction and job satisfaction. So any thoughts anyone wants to share around this startling stat?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind jumping in there for a second, Jen. And I think it's really important to recognize too that at the point of manual invoicing, $11.50 per invoice is a significant cost volume. If you're doing 10 or 15 invoices a month, it may not seem like a lot of time, but I know I speak from personal experience there that we have the tools available at our disposal, like ConnectWise PSA is a great example of that, to help lift the burden of creating invoices. And for those that have been on a webinar with me before, leading Zynk and being part of ConnectWise today, it's a real vision and mission for us, is to create an opportunity for businesses to be more profitable. That's a key testament to what we do. And ultimately, if you are generating invoices, the moment you generate them to the point when you have the cash at bank, you don't make another penny or dime on that service that you provide. You don't make money generating invoices. So this is a really important aspect that we have to bring up, is that the closer to automation you can get, the more opportunity you have for significant cash flow savings. So that's a huge opportunity there. But let's just maybe jump across there, I think, where we talk about the opportunity. Brent, you have a question now?
I was going to just jump in as far as the manual invoicing and the costing and stuff like that. I think the other aspect of it is not only to generate an invoice, which I think that ConnectWise PSA can do extremely well, it's that follow-up on the invoice as well too, right? Generating an invoice doesn't really put food on the table, so to speak. It's the collection of that cash. It's the processing of it over to the accounting system so that you can manage the AR account for that customer. I would, if we were in person, I'd ask everyone to hold up a hand if you've ever had a customer pay late on any invoice. And I would think everyone in the room would raise their hand. So having that information in the accounting system in a manner that you can follow it up on, and doing that effortlessly, which is what we have at Dean Dorton, is a real-time integration between ConnectWise and several accounting systems, and having that and not having to have additional manual effort there on that part, I think is outstanding as well, just to make that whole cash or quote to cash process, so to speak, so much more efficient.
Yeah, streamlining that process really as much as you can to get paid faster is crucial, really.
Close the cash gap.
Exactly right.
So talking about the invoice lifecycle, I think it's we've just really covered off on a key part of this. Once you create that invoice in the PSA, we as Zynk set out to create the opportunity to create simplification through to the accounting systems. And of course, that's an example of what the other people here at Dean Dorton and Zynk also perform to the various different accounting systems that they provide integration to. The most important piece of this puzzle is about breaking through the maze and creating opportunities to be more simplified in the way in which you do that. And you do that through integration. And I think it's important to recognize here that the reason why we're here today and talking to these companies is that they actually provide a service through the Connect marketplace. And more importantly, they are Invent certified. So as what was mentioned at the start of the webinar, that's a certification process, and the opportunity for us to work very closely with these companies is key. Through the creation of Zynk and WisePay over the years and now part of ConnectWise, our journey is to really bring the opportunities of how we help partners to be more streamlined and, more importantly, to reduce that cost burden. As I mentioned, you don't make money by sending invoices. You make money by delivering the services or selling the products or technology that you bundle as part of the services that you offer. And that's where integrations that connect to third-party systems, so whether you're using Dynamics Great Plains, or if you're using products like Business Central or Sage Intacct or Xero or QuickBooks Online, all of these compete to have that depth of integration. And because of the nature and the way in which the information needs to be transacted, you need to have that confidence. And that's where the Invent program takes an important role within the ConnectWise ecosystem to form part of what is ultimately a strength behind the integrations, the support that you receive from the companies that integrate with ConnectWise, and more importantly, what that Invent certification means to you as a customer of them, understanding that they have that opportunity to connect with ConnectWise around innovation and improvement of processes and systems. So while we're here talking about invoicing lifecycle, I think it's important to recognize that we all play a very important part. So whether you are looking or using one of the technologies that we integrate to, we're going to jump to the providers and have them talk a little bit more about what they offer for Invent as part of the Invent program and as part of their service offering, it's important for us to see how we approach the solve of the same problem. And I think that's a really important part. So maybe if we jump across to our next speaker here, let's talk a little bit more to, I think next one up was Avalara. So why don't we jump across, Brent, and you talk a little bit about tax, because, well, actually tax is before the invoice is sent to the customer, but more important, its calculation and accuracy is a critical part of that. So why don't we jump across to that?
Yeah, sure. I'm just happy to kind of talk high level here. If there's additional questions from you all, or if you guys want to just kind of keep the conversation going, we can do that. I can start off just by addressing, there was a question here in the Q&A, and it was around economic nexus. And that's something that is, so it's not new anymore, right? There was a law that was passed in 2018. It was a South Dakota versus Wayfair Supreme Court decision. But a lot of people don't really know about that yet. And the question was around economic nexus and what thresholds do each of these states have. And the short answer is it depends. I did drop a link in there for everybody to go and look at. And it kind of just, each state has their own ability to make up their own rules for what constitutes economic nexus. So it's just really good to be familiar with what the different thresholds are of the states. Some of them start as low as $100,000. Some of them are transaction based, but really it's up to the states and it's up to the individual businesses to keep track of what those things are, so that they know when they pass a threshold that they can go and register, because this way everybody's in the know, right? And everybody's staying compliant. There are certain situations where if you don't register, if you don't pay your taxes in certain states, you can get a very negative audit, and we want to avoid that. So while everybody, that's an MSP is always thinking about how to be profitable, it's often overlooked of how to mitigate risk and how to increase efficiencies. And that's where we come in, right? We want to help mitigate that risk so that you can stay focused on making profits. And tax compliance is really hard. Rules change, rates change. I was just talking to an MSP recently, and they were baffled by the fact that, labor on a new product might be taxable, but labor on an installed product might not be taxable, right? So there's all these kinds of gotchas that take place in the world of tax compliance, not to mention all the effort that goes into just filing your returns on time and making sure that they're accurate, right? So where we come in is we kind of take that burden off your plate. We, keep all the rates and rules up to date. And we're just a one-stop shop for the things that are tax compliance related, whether that's, helping to get registered in a state where you've got Nexus, or managing exemption certificates. Some of you may have customers that are exempt. So we can help with that. And then automating the returns, right? I mean, once you've done all of this legwork to get the taxes right, which you may or may not have, you've still got to go and file that return, and it's got to be accurate. And, you can take advantage of early filing discounts and things like that. And it's just really, really made simple. You don't have to think about it anymore once you have this event integration. All the transactions are stored. You can see them down to the line level detail in terms of city, state, county, jurisdictional taxes, things like that we don't often think about or consider. And then with one ACH payment, we can deploy all of those funds to the various government entities that are looking to receive them from you. And one of the things that's so great about this is it takes your resources, it takes this strain off some of your internal resources, and it allows you to potentially refocus them on efforts that are going to focus on your business and its profitability and growth. So, I'd be happy to continue conversing about this. If anybody has any, questions that have sparked in their mind based on that quick little overview, I'd be happy to address them. There was one other question here in regards to communication taxes, and I don't know how many folks on the call that applies to, but voice over IP, that's something that, when you start dealing with the world of communications taxes, it's almost like an excise tax, right? Where it's very, very unique and separate and requires a different level of reporting. And we do help in that regard. I did make the comment there, it's best to have a conversation with a specialist or an expert in that field, because while I may be an expert with things that Avalara does, I don't get into the nitty-gritty details of the communication space, but certainly we can help there. Let's see if there's any other questions. I think I saw our name come up in one of the...
There was actually a great webinar that we held with Avalara about a month ago, which actually covered off in detail quite a lot about the economic nexus and the functionality of how different addresses can play into different tax codes, and one block or a laptop supplied to one street address on the same street but in a different block ultimately resulted in a completely different tax code, which is huge. And there was a number which I'm probably quoting incorrectly, but it was about 103 tax changes were affected in 2023. 103,000, tax changes were affected in 2023. And that is unbelievable to think that as a business you have to manage and understand that. It's a huge complication. And I think if you were to think of the cost of impact that we measured before, which is about $11.50, if you were thinking about how tax could impact that as well, that's a greater impact, even more than the $11.50, especially if you get tax wrong. The tax collector isn't going to be concerned about what you collected. It's going to be about what you need to pay to the tax agency for that service. So that's a really important part. I might even get one of our team at ConnectWise to share a copy of that webinar in the show notes or the after session here. There is one other question there: is do you need a second Avalara integration or subscription for QuickBooks as well as the PSA? So that's probably a leading question into how you invoice, because what we do want to make sure is that the Avalara and the tax calculations occurs on the PSA invoice. So with the integration, via Avalara, we're going to calculate taxes. We're going to put that onto the invoice that you send from PSA to your customers. There isn't a need to have a second integration to QuickBooks, providing you're not generating invoices from QuickBooks, because ultimately that's where you'd be calculating taxes to the customer. And then the integrations, obviously passing that information through from ConnectWise, would send that tax liability through as part of the integrations, which is a great lead into our next slide, which is to talk to our integrators, Zynk and Dean Dorton. So I might kick off with Phil to start. So Phil, maybe if we just hand over to you for a bit of background there as to who Dean Dorton is and what you provide.
Yeah, so first of all, Dean Dorton is at its heart a full-service CPA firm. So I like to joke with folks and say we actually have people who like doing audits and who like doing taxes for a living, which I'm a CPA by trade, but I still find those two things way down at the bottom of my list of things to do today. Instead, I've chosen to focus my career, and I lead a team of individuals who have also focused their career on the technology side of accounting. So we work with organizations to implement accounting software solutions. In particular, I first acquired a license to use ConnectWise in my organization back in 2007. So I've got about 17 years experience working in this industry with these types of companies, and we've worked with integrations on Dynamics GP, we've worked on Dynamics Nav, we've worked on Business Central, and we do a lot of work now with the Sage Intacct solution, fully cloud-based application. So background is really in the financial side. Do have a real love for the technology and all things geek and how you can automate processes and stuff like that. So a lot of that really fits in really well to what we are talking about and the kinds of services that we do provide. Real quick, as part of our experience that we've had over the years, we've developed a product that we call MConnect that is, in its current state today, a real-time API-based interface that is fully automated. There's no batching, there's no manual processes. It completely connects ConnectWise PSA with the accounting system and allows everything to flow back and forth in a real-time state, so that as you look at your dashboards as you look at your, financial reports, any kind of information, it is immediate up to literally a few seconds ago when you processed any types of transactions in the ConnectWise system. So that's
interesting.
A brief overview
just
of
even
us.
sort of tying off into. Sorry, just a bit of delay there. I think the great focus there is about that automation. The only way you're going to get down to the 71 cents is by having technologies that create efficiency in those processes. There is no functionality that drives greater levels of bottom line profitability after an invoice is generated than automation, whether that's in collections, the accounting piece. That is the primary focus of what those integrations should be doing. So foundationally, as we can see, the integrations to Great Plains, Business Central and Sage Intacct there through the ImConnect product, but also looking at how you provide the services to support that too. Having a deep level of understanding of ConnectWise PSA is a key part of the services that you offer. I might just drop over to Zynk, and then we'll continue to sort of round table here as we talk about integration and some of the process efficiencies. So, James, did you want to talk a little bit more about Zynk and how you fit into the Invent program?
Yeah, Paul. Yeah, we're Zynk. We're an iPaaS provider we mainly focus on Sage. We're Sage integration specialists, really. So we automate with ConnectWise PSA, and we help Sage customers automate their business for all Sage packages. We're certified for PSA and Sage 50 and Sage 200 as the ground applications. But as an iPaaS provider, we offer a lot more other than just the Sage platforms that we support. So yeah, we see
and thinking about the problems that you solve for partners there.
Yeah, so we see integrations not just about kind of moving the data around, really. It's kind of automating that manual process and the process that you have through processing that invoice and collecting your cash, as well as cleaning the data as well. So manual input data can be prone to errors. You can have duplicate customers. Using an iPaaS system can allow you to clean that data and make sure your data is nice and user friendly, not just kind of pushing that invoice around. It's about automating that whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, coming from that background myself, we started WiseSync, over 10 years ago to solve a problem to cloud accounting technology, Xero and QuickBooks Online, which were the new foray into small business accounting. MConnect and Zynk both connecting into products like Sage Intacct. Maybe just to give us a little bit of a profile of the general type of customers or partners that you would see, whether they're looking to move off QuickBooks Desktop or whether they're already using Sage but potentially not integrating, which I find is quite strange because they're double handling. So, James, I might sort of throw to you and then kick back across to Philip to lead into that question as well.
Sure, yeah. So obviously ConnectWise has a legacy integration with Sage 50, so there's a lot of customers still using that we've come to realize as people are moving up the Sage ranges and moving up the versions, it is having more of an impact on how their integration is working. So we definitely solve that problem. We're built by a former head of development at Sage at its core. So, really in terms of the kind of Sage automation process, we can help you with pretty much any Sage product that you're stuck with, really.
Okay. And Philip, from your perspective, the types of partners, the challenges that they come to you and what is the way in which you approach?
Yeah, so first of all, to clarify, what we have is with the Sage Intacct solution. Sage is one of those companies that over the years has purchased probably about 20 to 40 different accounting packages. So we don't work with the Sage 50 or Sage 200, any of those other tools. It is strictly the fully cloud-based Intacct solution. But really what that lends us to receiving are clients that not only are maybe unhappy with the flow of the integration or the manual nature of the integration or anything like that, but they're also having issues with the accounting system itself. So QuickBooks might be timing out. Sage 50 might be causing them to gnash teeth and pull hair or something like that, and just not happy with the accounting solution. So the way we approach it is we're not just integrators. We are accountants by trade. We know balance sheets. We know income statements. We can help you with your, if you're in the Evolve group, for example, we have pre-formatted SLI reports that we can install into our environment to give you that reporting at a click of a button. So it's really more about solving a whole problem than it is the MConnect piece. That's really the icing on the cake. Our integration solution is fully tailorable, so we can talk about all the different fields that need to be mapped and where and when the data needs to go across. It's not a canned solution. It is tailorable to your environment. And again, it is fully automated. So there's nothing for the end customer to do there. So what we tend to see is companies that are growing, companies that are in merger and acquisition mode. They're looking to buy other organizations. They're looking to expand their footprint. We've got some companies that have 2 to 3 users in the accounting department. We've got some customers that have 30 to 40 users in the accounting department that are looking to make that connection between the financials and the ConnectWise PSA tool. So we've got some of the smaller ones, and I think we have a couple of the largest ConnectWise clients that ConnectWise has as well too, that use our integration tools. So it's kind of about the pain and the angst that the client will feel overall, not just with the interface or anything like that, but it's with an overall feel, not getting what they need out of their current system.
Yeah, part of the journey for a business through using PSA, you start out potentially as a small company, adopting and embracing the technologies. It's a huge application to actually implement, and that might be that you're integrated into QuickBooks Desktop using the native integration that's available. And then once you venture out into the big wide world of ERP style accounting systems, you end up finding that there's so many options for you to choose from, whether you're going online platforms or whether you're going into products which are potentially legacy as well. So thinking about the need of integration there, I'm sure my own experience has been, well, why do we need an integration to an online accounting system when we had this perfectly good desktop accounting system? I guess it comes down to the pain that's usually felt by businesses where they've been using that technology for such a long time, then all of a sudden here's a big shift. And sometimes that integration can be several $1,000s to not only get up and running, but also to actually have the integration provided by third parties here. That's important, because recognizing that we're talking about how you take that $11.50 down to 71 cents is through investment, and the investment in systems and processes and people, but also technologies. And that's a key part of why the Invent program exists, is to make sure that companies that provide this critical service where ConnectWise produces the information, but it needs to be translated, transported across into your accounting system. And whether you're on Sage Intacct, Business Central, Xero, or QuickBooks Online, that's pretty much the largest span of all of the accounting systems in terms of used predominantly by businesses. So there's a really important part here, is that the technology and tools is a key investment that you make. It's an investment in automation, simplification, and more importantly, that streamlined process to get the information across into your accounting system. If I could just lean into one key thing, what's your recommendation in where invoices should be generated and should be sent? How do you approach the use of the technology like ConnectWise PSA for automation around that? Maybe I'll jump across to you again, James, just to provide your recommendations, what you see partners with the most pain and suffering needing your product to help solve.
Yeah, 100%. The invoice should be generated from ConnectWise PSA. That's the way you handle your customer interactions. That's where you're building up your tickets and you're handling that customer relationship. So 100% lead it into there and handle that as your first point, as a truth of data, you might say. And accounting systems, it's there to handle your back office process, your company-wide profit and loss, your reporting to the tax authorities. But ConnectWise really is where you handle your day-to-day, your running of all your customer relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And Philip?
Yeah.
Would you join us in the same camp there?
I would agree completely. Yeah. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, but as James said, it's really your master system of record. Your processes are going to start in ConnectWise, whether it's the service ticket or the project or the opportunity, one of those types of things. And so that should all flow through. You should create your invoices in ConnectWise and send them from ConnectWise. And then really they're pushed more over into the accounting system for the cash collection. I tend to oversimplify it sometimes and just tell people really that in a lot of cases, your accounting system is really more about cash and reporting than it is anything else. It's not about generating transactions. Typically, it's more about those follow-up items, which does lead back to sort of one of the questions asked before in regards to having Avalara both in QuickBooks and in ConnectWise, and I would agree there as well, especially if you were with one of our solutions. It would just be a matter of having Avalara in ConnectWise to calculate the tax, to get it on the invoice before the invoice goes out the door, and you really shouldn't need it again in the accounting system if you're running things that way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that also.
So
getting the tax right and the invoices sent to the customer is absolutely crucial, and then it feeds into the accounting platform on the back of that based on exactly what your customer's seen and what they're expecting to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's too late to amend or adjust the invoice on the basis that you've only just pushed it to your accounting system. If it's already in the inbox of your customer, it needs to be right before it's sent. And the most important piece of that puzzle is it should be sent from ConnectWise PSA. And one of the challenges that I've found over the years is that some people are just really quite set in their ways, and they're like, no, I really, I want to look and review and check and cross check and double check and triple check, and then I'll send the invoice from my accounting system. But you have to question the scalability of that. That double, triple cross checking is not going to be adding to the efficiency that you create. It's going to be contributing to that $11.50 per invoice that you incur as a result of the time and effort. Now, I would probably expect handling invoices in two systems is going to be well over the $11.50 mark if they were to capture time, effort, and of course the cost of that double manual handling. It's not going to be $11.50. I can tell you it's going to be a lot more when you factor in all those costs. When we think about, you spoke briefly there about payments, which I think is an important part, because with the acquisition of Zynk and WisePay, we formed the creation of the opportunity for businesses to streamline their cash flow. And I know working very closely with integrators and specifically Dean Dorton and yourself, Zynk, it's important for us to, we're extending the capabilities of our products together. And we do that through not only the Invent certification, but also because we can see the value in which payments obviously helps businesses to be successful. I use the term so often that cash is the oxygen of businesses. You cut that off, you cut the life off of any business that exists today, because without cash flow, you cannot survive. It's not a negotiable, it's an absolute imperative. And that's where I think having those integrations that extend into systems that form a very important function for payment flows is a key part of that. So I'm just thinking about cash flow and how your products can help businesses streamline and automate that. Maybe, Philip, if you wanted to talk a little bit about your integration with WisePay there.
Absolutely. So I have been checking up on that lately, Paul. So we don't have it fully released to general availability yet, but we do finally now have a beta test that's going on with it. And we do expect, as long as things go well, to have that rolled out, I would say certainly within the next 30 days, so that we've got that full WisePay synchronization between ConnectWise and we're tackling it first on the Intact side for the Sage Intact solution. And then once that is complete, we will roll it into the Business Central piece as well. So, but I definitely think that's crucial. However, you're getting the cash, if it's coming in via the checks that the vendor might send, or if it's coming in via WisePay or some other form, credit card payment, something like that, it's absolutely critical to get that cash. I had not heard the phrase cash is oxygen before, but I am going to steal that and use it from now on. So I'll give you some royalties for that, Paul. But you are absolutely right with that. And I think the interfaces that can automate the flow of the data like that, to be able to have information in both of those systems in a real-time manner, really are the only way to facilitate that. Because if you have to push and pull your data or anything along those lines, it's really going to be a lot more manual work to get it to the point where you can receive that cash. So.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point there, and why I segued into the work that we're working on to make sure that WisePay is available to the MConnect customers. And that is because when payments are applied, we want to automate that step of the process as well. There's no point having great automation through the invoice integration, but then losing all of the efficiency when it comes to how payments are applied. So if you're currently using either PSA and Sage Intacct, or looking at the further development there for Business Central, it'll be a great opportunity for you to look at WisePay for PSA. We built WisePay to work directly with the PSA, so third-party integrators like Dorton, Zynk, and others could actually hook in and extend that integration that they already have for invoicing to then bring that payment information and apply it in the accounting system. So again, coming back to the source of truth, PSA, that's where the invoice is generated, that's where the information is recorded, that's where the payment is applied, and now with that extension of integration, also automates the application of payment across to their accounting system. So that gives them that end-to-end payment automation that we spoke about, cutting through the maze of transactional mayhem that comes after you send an invoice. So there was a couple of good questions that came through, and I think we just kick over to question and answer, because that's really what we're here for anyway. What options do we have to customize invoice formatting ConnectWise? That's a great question, because it's probably the first thing that comes up time and time again is I don't like the look and feel of the invoices that were probably designed in the early 2000s, probably even the late 90s, knowing how long ConnectWise PSA has been around. And that's okay. Up until, just even a few months ago, we were sending our invoices from ConnectWise PSA as WiseSync. We used ConnectWise PSA as our billing platform. So, we were using the standard templates. And the reality of it was, if you're providing a great service, people don't really care about the look and feel of your invoice as long as they're accurate. That's the most important part is, you can put additional information like service, who did it, whatever the additional details need to be decorated on the invoice, a custom template that you can build, you can design, you can create an invoice template in Report Writer, and then you can publish that Report Writer template to your invoices interface to give you the design constraints that you're looking for, the look and feel that you seek as part of that. So that's a really important part, is it still comes back to using the PSA as it's defined. Completed that, the invoice is closed. It's automated as a part of the email invoice batching process, where it gets sent out of the system. And then through those integrations with Dorton, with Zynk, with WiseSync, can then take that data across into the accounting system through that automation process that we just spoke about. And that's a key part, is creating efficiencies from the moment you send the invoice to the time in which you actually create or receive that payment. That's where you're going to have the closing of that gap. That cash gap comes down to a very important part of your business, is that cash flow cycle. And then fundamentally, it's about automation. It's about the receipt of payment into your system. And if I look at how we approach it with some of the larger partners in ConnectWise, businesses don't scale well with processes that require manual intervention. They only scale through human capital. You need more people to power those processes. This creates an opportunity where, as your business grows and the more invoices that you issue, the more capability, profitability that you're generating, it's simplified through you're not going to need more people in your accounts receivable. And we've seen businesses that embrace and adopt these technologies having significant of $100,000 a year when they factor the cost of the people that were powering those processes. Now, that doesn't mean that they've sent them off out into pasture, into new opportunities. It's an opportunity to redeploy those capabilities within the business to get better value from the outcomes that those people bring to your organization through more valuable work rather than menial tasks such as processing payments, applying payments, manually rekeying data into an accounting system. All very time consuming and absolutely not something that you should be doing for the long term. It will inhibit your growth and scale. So a couple more questions coming through. Does Sage Connect to PSA handle vendor credit memos and the inventory adjustment needed for RMAs any better than QuickBooks? Just wanting to know more about that. So maybe did you want to talk a little bit about how you both handle inventory from an integration standpoint? I might start with James just because Phil and I have been chatting along.
Yeah, so Sage does have more complexities around the inventory section, so there really is a lot more that we can automate around that process. So really, it's something that we could discuss how you specifically want to handle that RMM process, but there's inventory adjustments, there's stock journals and things that we can post into Sage that give you a bit more flexibility around tracking that inventory in there. If you really want to duplicate that process, ConnectWise PSA handles it great. So, that could be a solution is to use ConnectWise, but there's certainly more options in Sage to automate that process.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think, again, Sage is a very large global organization, so it really does depend on which Sage product you're talking about. The Sage Intacct solution that we deal with is more of a mid-market package, which, as Paul alluded to earlier, is going to be talking about thousands of dollars for a subscription for this. But the benefit that you get from it is a higher level system that does handle RMA adjustments. It handles, inventory, plain inventory adjustments, stock counts, all those types of things, vendor credit memos. I can honestly say that we haven't had any clients that have reported any issues with any of those things. Now, to what level and to what detail, I'd have to talk to some of our team that help with those implementations of not only the integration, but the accounting system as well. But again, it's the Intacct product by Sage is more of a mid-market package that does have a lot more capabilities. And what I've seen in a lot of cases is not really the integration with QuickBooks, meaning the ConnectWise API, that's the problem. It's QuickBooks, that's the problem. And it's limiting the types of things that you can do, the types of transactions that you can process. QuickBooks, for example, is very famous for, in situations, recalculating the cost of goods sold on invoices when you bring that data across. We, Intacct, we do not recalculate that. We take what is in ConnectWise, what ConnectWise gives to us. So there's a lot of things that could potentially be better by moving to the Intacct application, and could definitely be one of those two areas. Or those two areas could definitely be.
Look, I think it's important to. Sorry, James, go ahead.
Oh yeah, even the smaller versions of Sage kind of handle the inventory better than QuickBooks currently does. It's kind of one of those trade-offs that you get, which is old desktop applications that are built and developed for years versus cloud software like QuickBooks Online. The Sage 50 will handle your inventory better than QuickBooks will.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously moving up into the cloud accounting systems. I know speaking from a WiseSync standpoint, we handle inventory as an accounting transaction rather than as a stock on hand movement. So rather than moving 10 laptops through inventory, we simply transact the value of those laptops to an asset balance sheet account. That's similar to the way in which you transact inventory for your integrations, both of them getting nods from both of you there. So it sounds like foundationally it's use ConnectWise as it's designed. Manage inventory in ConnectWise, do your stock on hand management, inventory adjustments, inventory sale and purchase is all then essentially becomes an accounting transaction rather than a duplication of process, which is managing stock on hand in both systems, which was what was the only way to do it inside of QuickBooks Desktop, because that was the mechanism in which it was managing and integrating to that. Vastly and simply, it's just remove the double handling. Rely on the information that is already available to you and in controlled environments such as PSA. And it does give you the ability to have flexibility, such as choosing your inventory costing model. I would always suggest FIFO as the costing model. What's your preference there? Do you have a preference there, Philip, or is it too deep into the inventory world for a late afternoon webinar, early morning for me?
Actually, I didn't quite hear the question, Paul. Can you say it one more time?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I was just talking about inventory costing models, and I know that QuickBooks Desktop uses an average, which can cause probably chaos in the management of inventory. What's your preference for inventory costing?
We could name most anything really as a preference. I think it really comes down to what the customer needs and kind of what their preferences are. Fortunately, the systems that we deal with, and I'm sure James too, you've got the ability to select how you want your costing to be handled within the environment. So we could go along with, and we don't try to, recalculate anything that ConnectWise might be doing like QuickBooks does. So.
Yeah, why would you want to reinvent
sense.
the wheel?
Yeah, understood. So thinking about just moving forward there in the integration piece and just how the depth of integration, so just clearing through the various different types of records that are synced. So inventory, procurement, expenses, and invoices all form part of the framework records that are created. Is that something that you're syncing all of those record types? There's sort of no areas there that are not covered?
That's correct. We have the ability, projects, companies, products. I'm sure I'm missing some things, trying to think of them off the top of my head, but all the central areas, transactions, master records, all of those types of things, we have definitely that ability, and you can pick and choose. Maybe we've got some customers that only wanted to automate the sales invoicing and didn't use procurement or something along those lines. You don't have to turn it all on. You just turn on what matters to your organization, and then you've got the ability to tailor it a bit to how your workflow needs to work. But we do start you with standardized templates that out of the box would connect most any organization and get data flowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an opportunity there to be able to embrace and adapt and adopt, I should say, to include the extra components there. We see businesses that use more and more of ConnectWise being more successful because they're creating standardization and efficiency around those areas. So I think it's an important part of what that journey is. You spoke earlier about how you help Evolve partners with their service leadership index reporting through the use of those reports. That's a great example that Evolve as a peer group has been a really important part of many MSPs. Thousands of MSPs go to Evolve meetings to form part of a peer group where they can share insights and create information sharing that ultimately gets them to a point where they can grow and they can scale. And tools like yours come up time and time again, whether it's Avalara through the tax calculation for the US, Zynk and Dean Dorton, all providing a very important part of the connection into the extension of the systems that they run. So accounting is not what PSA does. It is not an accounting system. That's why you have these third-party systems moving forward. So it's really great to see that we have not only just the foundation of integration, but also the recognition of how important it is. And in fact, YSync was one of the first Invent partners certified by ConnectWise. I want to say it was probably about 2015 or 16 as that program was launched, because we could see how important it was to have access to future versions of ConnectWise to be able to test our product and support our partners, which is a critical part of that. So some really interesting questions coming through, some very directed towards YSync. Are you going to change the way in which procurement sync works? We do have obviously a lot of work on our current roadmap which includes modern integration. You've seen that already through the creation of the invoice pod showing payment options, which will be enlivened with more information for those people that are using WiseSync and WisePay. But also, this isn't about us, becoming, we are the payments division of ConnectWise. So foundationally, their WisePay is a core focus of ours. We're sort of narrowing down into how we help businesses to streamline and automate. And through the extension of our APIs in PSA is provided that access to third parties like Dorton and Zynk to be able to build integrations, so that we're saying, hey, this is an opportunity for you to engage with and, more importantly, integrate further to provide a better level of integration that creates and continues that efficiency. So while WiseSync itself is a functional product, it's obviously going to be a supporting mechanism of the WisePay product for those that are using QuickBooks Online and Xero. But if you're using Business Central, Sage Intacct, that's where Dorton and Zynk both come in to provide that extension of the accounting integration. And in the future, hopefully, we'll see those payment integrations in the marketplace to provide, or at least part of the product, so that businesses can get the benefit of having payment automation inside of PSA with WisePay extended out into their accounting system. The one question, which is probably more tactical, but it was adding a past due balance onto an invoice. That's an interesting one. I'm not sure if, Phil, if you had any thoughts with your accounting background. I traditionally see that in a statement of account rather than on an invoice. Do you have any thoughts around how you might see past due balance showing on an invoice?
I don't know that I've approached that from a ConnectWise standpoint. I certainly understand the ask, and I could tell that individual would probably be one that would raise their hand when I ask the question if you've ever had anybody pay an invoice late. But in most cases, I think that is handled by a statement. I haven't seen that functionality inside of ConnectWise personally before. So
yeah. And is that something that you would see generally in accounting systems? It's not something that I've seen where a past due balance is put onto an invoice sent to a customer.
From a pure relationship standpoint, let's say if you were using Sage Intacct to generate invoices, and that would not apply to this audience, but if you were, there is technically an option in the creation and formatting of the invoice in the Intacct solution to add customer balance information to the invoice. Folks usually put it right down at the bottom, and then when the invoice goes out,
so it could be like a running balance or something.
But they
so that could actually be something that you could use custom templates to do that, because Report Writer is flexible enough to be able to produce anything. The caveat, of course, is that you must then keep ConnectWise up to date with information. So, if you're not syncing payments back from your accounting system, or if you're not maintaining that, credit memo application in PSA, you can't rely on the information that is ultimately out of date. So, very important distinction there is it may not necessarily be just a line on an invoice. It's about what behavior you're trying to move through, and the behavior that you're looking for is on-time payment. So, what we recommend in that situation is auto payments is a key way to reduce your day sales outstanding, get that accounts receivable down, get people paying on time, give them the opportunity to make payment. And that's where WisePay is obviously a great supporter of that journey, having the integrations to the ConnectWise customer portal, pay now buttons on invoices that are sent out. So you've got the ability for the customer to click to pay via credit card and ACH or bank debit as part of that sort of direct and native experience. So we want to make it easier for them to pay, hopefully so that you don't have to chase them for past due payments and accounts receivable aging as part of that journey. So really interesting point there. It's something that I hadn't considered, but I don't want to necessarily gloat about it. Our DSO was 4. So the majority of our payments were in our bank account by the 4th day of the month. So we weren't waiting on past due payments for invoices that were issued, months ago, because we had a very clear focus on, the way in which we engage with partners and how we actually approach that. A couple of other quick questions that I'd love to cover off. Is there an integration for WisePay within Sell-Through Order Porter? Yes, there is. In fact, we just launched the new CPQ quote to cash flow. So if you haven't reached out, reach out to us there. to ask about that. I do recognize your company name, so I'll also make a note to have one of our team members reach out to you there. But essentially what the quote to Canada is, the new and improved version is actually going to create a restricted down payment, so fully restricted down payment in the PSA against the quote that has been approved and the collection taken from Order Porter. So that's going to give you the simplification of around 17 steps of cash upfront payments, which essentially means that you can have control over the way in which that restriction applies after the down payment has been created. So that was new feature number one. New feature number two is you can then apply that down payment restriction to the project sales order ticket agreement that has restrictions applied at a later stage. So now you've got control of when those funds, and that is a WisePay only capability. It's through the integration of CPQ and WisePay and ConnectWise PSA that we're able to achieve that. It was actually a dream of mine for the last 10 years, was to try and simplify and streamline that process. And we launched that only just recently. It was going through pilot. I think it's still in a pilot phase at the moment, kicking off for Zynk and WisePay customers in the next week. If you're on WisePay for PSA, that's the desktop accounting version for payments in PSA. That's the one that's going to get you that capability, and not too far away also for our MConnect partners there, and hopefully Zynk in the future too. So thanks for the question there. And moving through, I think we've pretty much covered off on most questions. So let's have a quick scan through. We are getting very close to time now. If there's anything else that you'd like to add, James or Brent or Philip.
Well, yeah, I'd just love to add that, because I've heard CPQ come up a few times on the call today, and one of the things that I wanted to mention is that we do also integrate with CPQ. So, this is something that I'm not sure everybody knows about, but just wanted to make sure that you understand that if you're trying to put together quotes and get them to your customer with the accurate tax amount, we do integrate there as well. And then there was one quick question. There was one question and it had been answered, and I wasn't able to go and reply to that since it had already been answered. So I kind of wanted to cover off on that real quick. And the question was around, just a moment, it was from Colleen, and it was around recognizing part number or part names. And the long and short of it is, over time, I imagine that is something that we will get better at with AI and learning models and things like this. But one thing to keep in mind is, because our engine is keeping up to date with all the rules and rates and changes and things, we use unique identifier codes that are specific to Avalara that map to your product codes. So whether or not, I don't believe we would be getting rid of our product codes, but making it easier for you to find the product codes that matter to you. Yes, I can say over time, I'm sure that we will have a really wonderful automated way to kind of help in that regard. Recognizing certain names as similar and making suggestions and things like that. So I did want to make sure that the folks understood that that is something that I imagine will be coming. And also just to clarify around why we have our unique product codes. So there you go.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the insightful panelists today. Thank you, Paul and Jen, for hosting as well. And to our panelists, thank you all of you for joining our webinar today. And if you're interested in learning more about Avalara, Dean, Dorton, or Zynk, please navigate to the related content bar or scan the QR codes that are being displayed now. We do hope to have you at our next webinar premiering April 24th, featuring GlassHive, Gong, and TimeZest, where we're going to discover how automation can transform your MSPs, improve additional operational efficiencies, and drive sustainable growth. You can register now by clicking on the webinar ad under the Q&A box as well, should you want to get ahead of that registration too. Should you have any follow-up questions, please do reach out to us at invent@connectwise.com, and we will be more than happy to assist you with any questions. Thank you for joining, and have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.